Welcome. This is not a story of tragedy. It's a story of waiting, of pretending, of a man who got dressed for work every morning long after he had nowhere to go. Sit with him for a while. He's been sitting alone for too long. He left the house at 7:40 a.m. sharp, just as he had every weekday for the past 11 years. Shirt neatly ironed, hair slightly damp from the shower, brown leather bag slung across one shoulder. His wife packed his lunch like always, smiling as she kissed him goodbye. "Don't be late," she said playfully, and he smiled back as if everything was still in its rightful place, but it wasn't. It hadn't been for the past 92 days. He no longer had a job. The office building still stood, tall and indifferent. But his ID card no longer opened the door. Downsizing, they called it. Nothing personal. He had smiled, nodded, shook hands with people who wouldn't remember his name in 2 weeks. Then he went home, sat in his car in the driveway for 30 minutes, and decided not to tell her. Just for one day. Just to figure things out. One day turned into 3, then a week, then a month. Now it was routine. He boarded the same train, rode 3 stops, and walked to the park instead of the office. At exactly 8:17 a.m., he sat on the same bench near the southeast fountain, where the sun filtered gently through the leaves. He would stay there for hours, pretending to scroll through work emails on his phone, occasionally adjusting his tie like a man preparing for a meeting that no longer existed. Around him, the world buzzed. People walked dogs, jogged, met for coffee, passed through on their way to somewhere. He felt like the only one going nowhere. The first week, he had felt like a liar. The second, a ghost. Now he just felt invisible. She still asked about work. He gave vague answers, long meetings, tight deadlines, tiring clients. She would listen, offer a shoulder rub, and move on to homework, bills, dinner. Their daughter once drew a picture of him in a tall building with a big desk. He nearly cried. Instead, he smiled and stuck it to the fridge. He didn't know why he couldn't tell them. Maybe it was shame. Maybe it was pride. Or maybe he just didn't know who he was without that title, that badge, that place to go every morning. At noon, he bought a sandwich and sat near the lake. Fed crumbs to birds. Sometimes he counted the number of joggers who passed in 30 minutes, just to give his brain something to hold. At 5:10 p.m., he boarded the train home. At 5:47, he stepped through the door. She asked how his day was. He said, "Not bad." Then went to change out of clothes that felt heavier every day. On day 93, it rained. Hard. He went anyway. No umbrella, no plan. Just sat on the bench soaked through, suit clinging to his back, shoes filling with water. An old woman passed and said something about the weather. He didn't reply, just nodded. Something about the rain made the lie feel heavier. That night, their daughter asked why his clothes were wet. He said he got caught between meetings. She laughed. Thought it was funny. He didn't. That night he stared at the ceiling, wondering how long this could last. Wondering when it stopped being pretending and became a life. The next morning, he picked up the briefcase and hesitated. His hand trembled. He put it down. She noticed. "You okay?" she asked. For a moment he wanted to say it, all of it. "I haven't had a job in 3 months. I sit in a park every day and pretend I matter. I feel like a ghost in a house I built." But he didn't. He just nodded. Said yeah. Just tired. She kissed him again, told him to take it easy, and he left, 7:40. Same train, same bench. The birds remembered him. That was something. That was enough, for now. Come closer. You won't hear much in this story. There are no fights, no shouting, only the sound of a man waiting for a phone call that never came. He doesn't raise his voice, He doesn't complain. He simply sits and hopes. And sometimes, that's the hardest kind of pain. He kept the phone on the small table near the window, always screen up, volume on. At first it was because he was expecting a call back from the hospital, then from the insurance office, and eventually, just from his son. It had been 5 weeks. He wasn't counting, not with numbers. He counted by weather. It had rained 3 times since they last spoke. The neighbor's cat had given birth to 4 kittens. The lady who sold bread downstairs had switched from sesame rolls to pumpkin loaves. Small things. Quiet markers of time. His apartment was small but clean. The kind of clean you can only keep when there's nothing else to fill the space. 1 chair, 1 fan, a kettle, a photo of his wife on the shelf beside a dead plant he still watered out of habit. She had been gone for 3 years now. Cancer took her faster than they said it would. He still talked to her sometimes, out loud, just to break the silence. He used to be a teacher, 30 years in front of a blackboard, writing names, equations, dates. Now the only mark he left each day was the steam from his tea fogging the same window glass. His son called every once in a while, usually short calls, always busy. Meetings, projects. Just wanted to check in, Dad. He always said he was doing fine, always ended with take care, okay. But this time, the call never came. Days became a loop. Wake up, sit by the window, water the plant, check the phone, turn on the news without sound, make tea. Sometimes he dressed up just to feel different. Buttoned a shirt, combed his hair, sprayed cologne that hadn't been used in years. He once practiced what he would say when the phone rang, even wrote it down. Just a simple, "How are you, son?" But the phone stayed still. He didn't want to call first, not out of pride, just fear. Fear that the voice on the other end might sound rushed, distant, forced. That it might make the silence feel more honest than the words. One evening, as he stirred honey into his tea, the power went out for a moment. Just a flicker. The room dimmed. Then came back, but something in him stayed dark. He looked at the phone again, tapped it, just in case it froze. But there were no missed calls, no notifications, just the empty wallpaper of a younger version of his son, smiling with a soccer ball under his arm. He turned off the lights, sat in the quiet. Outside, people passed by, laughed, lived. He listened, not out of envy, just curiosity. That night, he dreamed of a ringing phone. Woke up at 2:44 a.m., heart racing, reaching for the device. Still nothing. In the morning, he placed the phone back on the table, turned it face down, not in anger, just surrender. Then he looked at the photo of his wife and said quietly, "I miss him too." And for a brief moment, the silence didn't feel as cruel. Some men never cry in front of people, not their wives, not their friends, not even themselves, if the mirror counts. But every man has a place where he finally breaks. For him, it was the couch. And the only witness was the creature who never asked questions and never walked away. Every night followed the same script. After dinner, after the dishes, after pretending to check emails that no longer mattered, he sat on the couch in the dark. The living room was still. No TV, no music. Just him, the faint hum of the refrigerator, and Olive. She was old now. Her golden fur had gone gray at the muzzle, her eyes foggy but gentle. She didn't move as fast anymore. Some days her legs stiffened after short walks, and she spent hours curled on the floor like a tired question mark. But she was always there, and that was everything. He used to be someone people came to for answers. At work, he solved things. At home, he fixed things. A leaky sink, a failed project. a child's broken toy. But now, everything felt unfixable. His job had been cut months ago, not for performance, just numbers. He told no one, said he was consulting, freelancing, kept the routine because if he let go of that, what was left? His wife had noticed something, but she didn't press. Their daughter was busy with college applications. The world spun forward. He stood still. Only Olive noticed. On the nights when he couldn't hold it together, she climbed onto the couch with effort and pressed herself into his side. That pressure alone, warm, steady, breathing, was enough to open the floodgates. He didn't sob. He didn't wail. Just sat still while tears slid down his face like they had always been waiting for permission. She never moved, never judged, just stayed. She was there the night he whispered, "I don't know who I am anymore," into the dark. She was there the day he found the rejection letter from the last company he applied to. She was there when his hands trembled too much to button his shirt. She was there when he broke a mug and sat on the floor among the pieces, staring like he had shattered more than ceramic. In the mornings, she followed him as he dressed, always in clothes meant for nowhere. When he clipped on a tie, she sat by the door. When he returned home hours later with nothing but coffee breath and empty hands, she was the first to greet him. Tales don't lie. Neither do tired eyes. One day, she didn't get up, not even when he called her name. He rushed her to the vet, hands shaking more than they had in years. They told him it was time. Her body had given what it could. He sat on the floor of the sterile white room, holding her head in his lap. He didn't say much, just breathed slowly, like maybe if he matched her rhythm, she would stay a little longer. When she exhaled her last breath, he didn't cry. Not then. He waited until he got home, until he sat on the same couch in the same silence. He looked at the empty floor beside him. That's when it broke. His shoulders collapsed, his hands curled into fists. And in the place where she used to lie, he whispered, "Thank you." The next day, he vacuumed the floor but couldn't bring himself to touch the corner where she slept. He kept her collar in a drawer. He didn't replace her, not because she was irreplaceable, but because she had been the only one who ever saw him fully, without blinking. He still sat on the couch some nights, out of habit. Sometimes, he imagined the weight of her head on his leg. It made the silence bearable. It made the man he was feel a little less invisible. And sometimes, that was enough. Some endings don't come with fire. Just quiet. Just a man in a suit, standing under a tree, watching the woman he once loved begin again. This isn't a story of jealousy. It's a story of dignity, of grief wrapped in grace. Stay close. This one hurts gently. He stood near the back, behind the rows of white chairs and perfect centerpieces, under a fig tree that cast shifting light on his shoes. He had polished them that morning with more care than usual. Same suit he wore to court, to their anniversary dinner years ago, and now to her wedding. Not their wedding, hers. She looked beautiful. Not in the way he remembered, not like someone trying to impress, but like someone who had finally settled into herself. She didn't see him at first. Too many hugs, too much music, too much joy. And he didn't need her to. He hadn't come to interrupt. He had come because when he opened the invitation 2 months ago, his first instinct was to throw it away. But something in him didn't. Something in him whispered that maybe showing up was the last honest thing he could do. The ceremony was soft. Strings played. The officiant spoke gently. The groom's voice trembled when he said, "I do." That made something twist in his stomach. Not out of resentment, but recognition. He remembered trembling too, He remembered the moment she first looked at him like he was the future. Now that look belonged to someone else. After the kiss, the guests applauded. He didn't, just smiled. A small one that said, "I get it." During the reception, someone passed him a drink. Another person, not knowing, said, "Aren't weddings the best?" He nodded, said yes. Then found a spot away from the tables, near a low hedge where the light was golden and no one noticed him. That was when she saw him. Her expression froze for a moment, then softened. She walked over. No words for a few seconds. Then a "thank you for coming." He said, "Congratulations. You look happy." She did. And that was enough. Her new husband came over, introduced himself, shook his hand. There was no tension, no rivalry, just an acknowledgement between two men who had, in different times, loved the same person. Then came the toasts. They asked him to speak. Not out of pressure, out of memory. "You knew her best," someone said. He stood, raised the glass, told a short story about how she once burned toast and danced barefoot in the smoke, how she laughed through tears, how being loved by her meant being seen, and how sometimes the most beautiful love stories don't end with forever. They end with understanding. There was silence, then soft applause, then tears. From her, from someone near her, from maybe even him, though he blamed the champagne. He left early, walked to the station alone, no bitterness in his step, just weight and peace. That night, he took off the suit, folded it carefully, and placed it back into the closet. Then he sat by the window with a glass of water, staring at the quiet street. The stars were faint, the night was warm, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like the past. He just felt real. He used to be the one everyone turned to, the one who stayed late, remembered birthdays, fixed broken code and broken people. But time has a quiet way of replacing you, not by force, just by forgetting you exist. This is not the story of a man fired. It's the story of a man still sitting at his desk long after his voice stopped being heard. He arrived at 7:55 a.m., not because anyone asked him to, no one noticed anymore. But habits are hard to break, especially the ones tied to self-worth. He used to unlock the office. Now the door was already open. Music was playing, laughter bouncing off glass walls, bright sneakers and buzzwords and new acronyms he had to Google quietly at his desk. He smiled at everyone. No one asked how his weekend was. He used to run meetings. Whiteboard in one hand, marker in the other. Now the whiteboard stayed clean. Slides did the talking. Slack threads replaced questions. He read them all, but rarely replied. His voice felt like a foreign language in the room now. He had been here longer than the chairs, longer than the paint. He had onboarded half the people in the building. Now they walked past him in small herds, heads close, laughing about memes and weekend festivals and deadlines he was no longer part of. His manager was kind, always kind. But kindness isn't the same as respect. Kindness says you're tolerated. Respect says you're needed. They asked him once to mentor an intern. The intern called him sir. He smiled, but it stung. He tried to share what he knew. Systems, logic, the rhythm behind how things work. The intern nodded politely and did things his own way anyway. Faster, flashier, less stable. But that didn't matter now. He sat at his desk, fingers hovering over a keyboard, pretending to reread a brief he had already memorized. Across the aisle, someone's standing desk beeped as it rose. Someone else took a selfie with their team. His name was no longer tagged in team wins. He used to stay late. Now he stayed because home felt like defeat. He ate lunch at his desk, not because he was busy, just because the lunch table had become a place of inside jokes. He laughed when they laughed, not because he understood, just because it made him feel less ghostly. One Thursday, he opened his inbox and found a new org chart. His box was smaller now, fewer lines connected to it. No dotted lines, no arrows, just a rectangle slowly fading. He remembered onboarding the person who now oversaw him. She was sharp, driven. He wasn't bitter, just invisible. That afternoon, a group was taking a photo for a product launch. He was asked to step aside, not in a cruel way, just a logistical one. "You're not on this sprint," they said. He nodded, took the photo. They didn't send him a copy. That night, he didn't turn off his computer. Left it humming on the login screen like a heart still beating in an empty room. At home, he told his wife the project was shifting, that he might explore other opportunities soon. She nodded, said she supported him. But support is not the same as understanding, and understanding is not the same as being seen. He stood in the hallway for a while, coat still on, briefcase in hand, watching the stillness of his own house. Then he stepped into the bedroom, undressed, and folded his shirt carefully. Tomorrow, he would arrive at 7:55 again. Sit at the same desk, watch the same people rush past him, and wonder how long someone can stay in a place before they become part of the furniture. Useful, quiet, and unnoticed. He crossed oceans for them, changed languages, swallowed pride. But now, in the house he built with his back and bones, no one listens to the way he speaks. This is not the story of failure. It's the story of a father whose greatest victory turned into the quietest exile. He always knocked before entering their rooms, not because it was necessary, but because it reminded him that this was their space now. The house had grown from his sweat, his overtime shifts, his second jobs, and the burns on his palms from years in unfamiliar kitchens. He never spoke much of what it took to bring them here. The visa lines, the silent bus rides, the humiliation of being corrected by teenagers at checkout counters. It didn't matter then. What mattered was that they would grow in a place where their voices wouldn't tremble, where their papers didn't get extra looks, where their dreams weren't rationed. And they did. They grew, fast, fluent, sharp. His daughter once told him to speak softer when they were at school meetings. "Dad, your accent's too strong. People don't understand." He nodded, smiled, said little. His son told him he didn't need to work anymore, that he could just rest now. But resting felt like erasing. At dinner, they talked fast. He tried to follow. Sometimes he laughed in the wrong place, just to feel included. They told stories of college, politics, love, code, apps, inside jokes. He served the rice, cleared the plates. They never asked him what he thought. Maybe they assumed he had nothing to say. He sat in the living room after they went upstairs, holding a photo from their first year in this country. He was thinner then, tighter in the face. His hands looked younger. The kids were small, smiling wide. They used to sit in his lap and ask for stories of home. Now they barely looked up from their screens. He overheard them once. His daughter said she was embarrassed when he tried to talk to her friends. His son agreed, said he wished he could teach him to be more modern, that he didn't get how things worked here. The words were quiet, but they exploded inside him. He didn't confront them, just made their tea the next morning like always, with the right sugar, the right milk. That was love. Not loud, not pretty, just precise. He started walking more, long circles around the block. He waved to neighbors who didn't wave back. He sat on benches and watched dogs play. He used to be strong. Now he was polite. They said things like, "You're so helpful." But helpful is not the same as wanted. One night, he packed a small bag. Not to leave, just to test if they'd notice. They didn't. He unpacked it silently, then folded his clothes again, ironed his old shirts, polished his shoes. There was nowhere to go, but he wanted to look like he mattered. At breakfast, his son told him about a promotion. His daughter scrolled. He smiled, said he was proud, meant it. Then took his tea and sat alone by the window. He whispered in the language they no longer understood. I gave you everything, and I don't know how to ask for anything back. He set the alarm for 5:10 a.m. Not because he needed to, because his body had learned that survival was a schedule. He moved through the morning like muscle memory, boiled the kettle, ironed his shirt, packed the lunch boxes, checked the locks. He did it quietly, without fanfare, because that was how you stayed dependable. The house started to wake behind him. Doors creaked open. A phone buzzed. A toothbrush hummed. He left before anyone could ask anything. The office was cold when he arrived. He liked it that way. No one there yet. Just his screen, the humming lights, the smell of stale carpet, and responsibility. The day passed in tasks. People needed things. He delivered. Quietly, cleanly. He smiled in meetings, nodded in hallways, laughed at jokes he didn't hear. On the way home, he bought groceries, picked up dry cleaning, replied to 3 messages that didn't need replying. When he walked through the door, the house was full of noise again. He listened, always listening. Their days, their complaints, their goals. He was the net, the structure, the ground everyone landed on. And he never complained, never cried, never raised his voice. Not even the night his boss told him someone 10 years younger would be leading the next phase. Not even when his back spasmed from lifting too much alone. Not even when he stood in the bathroom, gripping the sink with both hands just to feel anchored. They loved him. He knew that. But love without awareness is a silent weight. No one asked if he was tired, if he wanted a night off, if he ever wished someone else would lead, just for a day. At dinner, he passed the salt, asked about school, helped with math homework, replaced a light bulb, took out the trash. Everyone thanked him, but no one looked up. That night, after dishes, after closing the garage, he sat alone at the kitchen table. The light above hummed, the only sound. He placed both hands flat on the wood, then gently laid his head between them. He didn't cry. He didn't sigh. He just stayed there. Still. For once. Still, his wife walked in. Froze, then softly asked, "Are you okay?" He didn't answer right away, but something in his chest loosened. A rope, perhaps, not fully undone, but softer. He looked up and smiled, not because he was okay, but because someone finally asked. He never expected the phone to ring, or the door to knock, or anything really. He had grown used to the echo of quiet rooms. But sometimes, healing doesn't arrive with a loud return. It comes as a small knock, a warm bag, and the moment you realize you were never completely forgotten. His birthday had passed like any other Tuesday. He woke early, boiled water, made tea. There were no balloons, no candles, no voices, only the soft rattle of the kettle and the scrape of his chair on the floor. He looked at the phone twice, then 3 times, then stopped checking. No texts, no missed calls. He told himself it was fine, that grown children had busy lives, that fathers weren't meant to need reminders. Still, something in his chest felt tight. He didn't mention it when the building manager passed by, just nodded, smiled, said the tea was good today. Around noon, he warmed leftover rice, ate slowly. The clock made its usual clicks. The news played with low volume in the background. He didn't listen, just sat and let time fold around him. At 8:42 that evening, there was a knock, not loud, just enough to pause the air. He opened the door and saw his son, a little taller, a little thinner, a little more tired around the eyes. He was holding a paper bag with two hands like it might break. "Hi, Dad," he said. "I was nearby. Thought I'd drop this off." It was sweet bread, the kind with orange peel and raisins. The kind he used to buy on Sundays when his son was small. He hadn't tasted it in years. They didn't say much, just sat on the couch. The lights were dim. The room didn't feel so empty. His son asked how he was. He asked about work. They answered with simple sentences. No deep apologies, no rewinding the years. But something about the way the boy listened made the old man feel less invisible. Before leaving, his son pulled 2 batteries from his coat pocket. "You mentioned the remote was dead. I remembered." He smiled. Not because of the gift, but because of the remembering. After the door closed, the silence returned, but softer. He made tea, opened the bag, broke off a piece, ate it slowly. The sweetness was gentle, like a voice he hadn't heard in a long time. That night, he placed the batteries in the drawer next to a folded letter he never sent. He slept early, slept well. In the morning, the light through the curtain felt different, warmer. Not because the world had changed, just because for the first time in a long while, he felt like someone had looked back at him and seen him whole.